Before we start, make sure we don't lose you in the dark. Subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment to show you are here. I was a deputy in the northern part of the county, the stretch with more trees than people, where roads vanish into forest and radio signals die without warning. Most nights were quiet. Noise complaints, drunk drivers, the occasional domestic call that ended with one guy cooling off in the back of the cruiser. But that night the call came in at 2:17 a.m. Female voice. Calm. Almost too calm. Said there was someone in her house. When dispatch asked for the address, she gave a street name I didn't recognize. Birch Hollow Lane. I asked who picked it up, and they said it came through our backup system, one that only pings when the main line fails. That alone was weird. But what bothered me more was the voice. I listened to the recording on the way out. She said, "I don't need help. I need someone to see." I pulled up our digital map and entered the address. Nothing. No match. I used old county plat records instead. Birch Hollow Lane was listed on a 1992 survey, long since retired, supposedly wiped out by a wildfire in the late 90s. No homes. No survivors. No structures ever rebuilt. But the call was real. The GPS coordinates were embedded in the dispatch log. I followed them. It took me 27 minutes down unpaved roads and a single-track gravel path that twisted like it had no end. My cruiser barely made it through. Trees leaned close on both sides. The deeper I went, the more I felt like I wasn't in my district anymore. I wasn't even in the county. I passed a wooden sign so weathered I couldn't read it. Then the trees opened just enough to reveal a house. Old two-story colonial style, shutters missing, paint peeled like sunburned skin. But the porch light was on. I parked and radioed in. Static, tried again, more static. I opened the door slowly, flashlight in one hand, the other near my sidearm. The wood creaked under my boots as I stepped onto the porch. No wind, no bugs. No night sounds at all, just silence, heavy and unnatural. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Then the door opened on its own. I called out, identified myself. "Sheriff's Department, hello?" No reply, just a faint hum like old electricity buzzing inside the walls. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The air was stale, like the house hadn't been lived in for years, but it didn't smell abandoned. It smelled occupied, like someone had just left the room before I arrived. I moved through the hallway, slowly clearing corners. Everything was covered in dust except for the floor. Clean footprints led from the door to the staircase. Bare feet. Small. I followed them to the stairs. Every creak of the wood louder than it should have been. As I reached the second floor, I saw a figure at the end of the hallway. A woman. Pale, long hair, back turned. She didn't move when I called out, just stood there, frozen. I took 2 steps forward. "Ma'am, I'm here to help." She tilted her head slightly, like listening. Then she whispered something I couldn't make out. I raised my voice, more forceful now. "Turn around, slowly." She didn't. Instead, she said, "You saw it, didn't you?" Then she stepped sideways, through the wall, not into a room, through the solid wall like it wasn't even there. I stood there, heart racing, my mind trying to tell me I'd seen it wrong. But the prints on the floor didn't lie. They stopped at the wall where she vanished. And behind me, the front door had closed. I didn't remember shutting it. I drew my weapon, not because I planned to use it, but because it was the only thing keeping my hands from shaking. I stepped toward the wall where she disappeared and pressed my palm against the surface. Cold, solid, just drywall. No tricks, no seams. I backed away and scanned the hallway again. 3 doors, all closed. I opened the first. Empty bedroom, dusty mattress. A dresser with no drawers, no footprints, no signs of life. I checked the closet. Nothing. The second room was worse. The walls were covered in hundreds of tiny nail holes, as if something had been tacked up and ripped down over and over. The air felt thinner in that room, and the buzzing in the walls grew louder, almost like whispering, just beneath the frequency I could understand. I closed the door and turned toward the third room. That's when I heard the voice again. Not hers, a man's. Sharp, fast. Like a radio transmission played back at the wrong speed. I spun around. No one was there. But my radio crackled to life. Unit 37, status check, came the dispatcher's voice, faint and distorted like it was coming from underwater. I grabbed the mic, thumbed the button, and said, 37, I'm on site. Got a possible 1096. Female, mid-30s. Something's not right here, requesting backup. I waited for a reply. Nothing came back. Just the same buzzing noise. Then a different voice whispered through the static. You're not supposed to see it. I dropped the mic. The radio went dead again. I turned and made my way downstairs, ready to clear the first floor again and get the hell out. But when I reached the bottom of the stairs, the layout had changed. The front door was gone. Completely gone. Replaced by a wall with a painting hanging on it. A portrait of me. Same uniform. Same badge. Only my eyes were hollow, blacked out with thick brush strokes. I staggered back and bumped into something soft. I spun, weapon raised, and found myself in the living room I'd already cleared. Only now it was fully furnished, clean, lived in. A fire crackled in the stone hearth. A tea kettle whistled from the kitchen. The air smelled like cinnamon and wood smoke. None of this had been here minutes ago. I called out again. Sheriff's Department, hello? Is anyone here? The room was silent, but then the kettle went quiet too, as if someone had lifted it. I edged toward the kitchen, careful not to let my boot squeak against the hardwood. The kitchen was empty, but there were 2 cups on the table, both steaming. I touched one, hot, recently poured. The wallpaper looked new, freshly glued. I stepped back and nearly tripped over something at my feet. A child's toy. A plastic police cruiser. Identical to the one I drove. Except the number on the side wasn't my unit. It was my badge number. Then the hallway light flickered behind me. I turned slowly and saw a figure standing there again. Not the woman this time. A child, barefoot, face shadowed. He raised one hand and pointed at me. His eyes reflected like animal eyes in the dark. Then he mouthed something. I couldn't hear it, but I read the words clearly. Follow or forget. Then he turned and walked into the dark. I should have run. I should have fought every instinct to stay. But I followed him. Because part of me believed I was already forgetting something. Something important. Something mine. I followed the boy into the hallway, my flashlight flickering as if the batteries were draining faster than they should. The walls pulsed slightly with each step, as though the house itself was breathing beneath the wallpaper. The boy didn't make a sound, his feet silent on the floor as he moved ahead of me. Always just far enough that I couldn't catch his face, only his outline. I called out to him once, but the word came out slower than I intended, like my voice had to push through water to reach the air. He didn't respond. He turned a corner and vanished into a room that shouldn't have existed. I say shouldn't, because when I cleared the house earlier, I counted 4 rooms total upstairs. Now I stood in front of a 5th door, wide open, light spilling out in a dull amber hue that didn't come from any bulb I recognized. I stepped inside and the smell hit me first. Old wood, wet leaves, and something underneath it all. Something metallic and earthy like blood left out in the sun. The room was lined with filing cabinets, dozens of them, all labeled with names I didn't recognize. Some were scratched out. Some had dates that hadn't happened yet. In the corner stood an old desk with a rotary phone resting on top. It rang once as I approached. I picked it up, no dial tone. Just a single voice, calm and emotionless. It said, "You're not logged yet, but you will be." I dropped the phone. The cabinet behind me slammed open by itself, and inside was a folder labeled with my full name. My badge number was written in thick black ink across the tab. I opened it and saw a photo of me, taken from behind the wheel of my cruiser. It was dated today. I flipped the next page and saw a handwritten report titled Final Call, Unit 3 to 7. The paper was blank beneath the title. I turned around, heart pounding, only to find the room empty again. No cabinets, no desk, just 4 blank walls and no door. I reached out blindly and found nothing but smooth wood. I pounded my fists, called for help, screamed into the silence, but the sound felt swallowed by something vast and invisible. Then the wall behind me gave way, and I stumbled backward into another hallway, this one different again, older somehow, like it had been built before the rest of the house, with stone walls and a ceiling too low for comfort. Along the wall were framed photographs, each showing different officers in uniform. Some wore badges I didn't recognize. Some uniforms were too old, Civil War era or earlier. But the last frame was empty, the glass cracked, the tag beneath it already engraved with my name. I didn't wait to see what came next. I started moving fast, gun out again, flashlight nearly dead, breathing hard. I passed a mirror hanging on the wall and caught a glimpse of my reflection. It wasn't me. It wore my uniform but stood still while I ran past. Its mouth moved, but I didn't stop to read the lips. I kept going until I reached a staircase I didn't remember. Downstairs again, back to the living room, or something that looked like it. The fireplace was cold now, the furniture gone, replaced by rows of chairs all facing the same direction. Like a church. At the front stood a pulpit, and behind it, a man wearing a badge that glowed faintly under the dim light. His face was wrong, not deformed, just unfinished, like a painting someone had erased halfway through. He gestured for me to come closer. I didn't move. He spoke in a voice that rattled the windows. "You logged the call. That means you agreed." I asked what he meant. He said, "You heard her voice. You followed the signal. That's how we grow. That's how we come through." I told him I was leaving. He laughed. "You already did. You just don't know it yet." Then the chairs began to fill. One by one, figures appeared, dressed in uniforms from every decade, century even, all staring at me, eyes black and hollow. I turned and ran again, this time not looking back. Every hallway I passed twisted into a new layout. The house had no center anymore. Just loops and corridors and stairs that led me back to rooms I swore I'd left behind. Finally, I crashed through a door that led to the front yard. My cruiser sat in the same spot, headlights still on. I jumped in, started the engine, slammed it into reverse. The path behind me was clear, gravel crunching under the tires. I didn't stop driving until I hit paved road. Only then did I radio in. "Dispatch, this is Unit 3 to 7. I'm clearing from Birch Hollow. The house was no contact, nothing to report. The voice that responded wasn't the dispatcher. It was mine. You did good, it said. Now someone else can find their way in. I drove straight back to the station without stopping once, and when I pulled into the lot, the sun was just starting to rise, but the light looked wrong, like it was filtering through tinted glass. Everything had a slight yellow tint, like the world was aging around me. I stepped out of the cruiser and walked inside, expecting the usual overnight shift, but the front desk was empty. No phones ringing, no typing, no chatter in the back rooms, just silence. I called out twice and finally heard footsteps coming from the hallway. Officer Delaney appeared, but he looked strange, like he hadn't slept in days. His uniform was wrinkled and his eyes were too wide. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me, then asked how I got in. I told him I drove back from a 911 call. He shook his head and said no one logged any call from me. Not last night. Not ever. I showed him the time-stamped photo I'd taken of the address on my in-car computer and the GPS ping from the dispatch tablet. But the data was gone. Wiped completely. He took my radio, checked the frequency, then frowned and said my unit had been out of service for hours. No signal. No activity. No record of movement since 2 a.m. I felt sick, like I'd missed something important, like I'd walked back into a life that had shifted 2 inches to the left. Delaney took me to the sergeant, who looked up slowly from her desk and asked if I was okay. Before I could answer, she pulled out a folder and said they'd already filed my final report. I asked what she meant, and she showed me the page. It was the same report I saw in the house, in the file room, with my photo and the title. Final call, Unit 3 to 7. Only now the page was full. Not blank. Not empty. But written in someone else's handwriting and signed with my name. Dated this morning at 4 a.m. I didn't remember writing it. I didn't remember coming into the station. I didn't remember anything after the moment I heard my own voice on the radio. They put me on medical leave, said it was stress, said strange things happen on late shifts in isolated areas, and that the brain fills in gaps when it's exhausted. I tried to believe them. For a few days I stayed home. I didn't sleep much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the hallway of that house stretching longer and darker, pulling me back in. I turned off my phone, unplugged the radio, disconnected everything with a speaker, but I still heard it at night, faintly beneath the sound of my own breath, a voice saying the same sentence over and over. You answered, you saw, now you belong. Then the phone rang. I hadn't turned it on. No lights, no signal, no service, but it rang. And when I picked it up, I heard breathing. Not mechanical, not static. Just slow, deliberate breath. And then a woman's voice whispered the same words she said the night of the call. I don't need help. I need someone to see. I threw the phone against the wall, but it didn't break. It just lay there. Screen lit, battery full. Time frozen at 2:17 a.m. The next day I went back to the station and tried to pull footage from the dash cam. But the files were corrupted. No video, just hours of static, except for one moment at the end, where the screen flickered and showed my face, staring into the camera. Eyes vacant, mouth open, like I was screaming in slow motion. But there was no sound. Just a flicker of movement behind me, in the reflection of the window. Something tall. Something gray. Something watching. They told me to take more time off, so I did. I stayed at a friend's cabin for a week, deep in the woods. No cell service, no mirrors, no reflections. I thought maybe distance would break the connection. but the silence there was worse than the voices at home. I woke up on the third night and found muddy footprints on the floor, leading from the door to the edge of my bed. Small, barefoot, just like before. And at the foot of the bed sat the plastic police cruiser I'd seen in the house. Except this time the number on the side wasn't mine. It was my friend's badge number. I left before sunrise, drove without stopping, straight through 3 counties back to my apartment. When I got there, the door was already open. The lights were off, but the TV was on, playing an old tape from a body cam I never owned. And on the screen was me, walking into that house, the camera jerky, the audio silent. Until the moment I turned to face the mirror and saw the reflection step out toward me. Then the video cut to black. I stopped trusting mirrors after that night. I covered the one in my bathroom with a towel and avoided all reflective surfaces as much as possible. But reflections found me anyway. In car windows, in puddles on the street, in the shine of my coffee mug. And in each one I saw it. A flicker. A delay. A version of me just slightly out of sync, staring back with just a little too much intensity. The strange part is, the people around me didn't seem to notice anything was wrong. I was showing up to work. I was speaking normally. My reports were filed. My cruiser logged miles. And yet I couldn't remember doing any of it. I would blink, and suddenly hours had passed. I'd find notes written in my handwriting that I didn't recall writing. A coffee cup half empty in my hand I didn't remember pouring. And all the while, people kept telling me I looked good. Rested. Like something inside me had finally calmed down. But I didn't feel calm. I felt hollow. One morning I woke up and my phone was already in my hand, the flashlight on, pointed at the ceiling. I hadn't turned it on. There were no calls, no messages, but the recent photo log showed a picture of me, taken in the hallway mirror at 2:17 a.m. I was asleep in bed, but the photo showed me standing, eyes open, smiling. I went back to the station and requested to pull my own cruiser cam footage. The tech asked why I needed it. I told him I was reviewing a past call. He gave me a strange look and said he'd already submitted my case file. I asked what he meant, and he said the Birch Hollow case had been closed. I said there was no such file. He turned the monitor to show me the database. There it was. Officer report. Final log. Digitally signed by me. It even had a video file attached. I clicked play. It showed me walking into the house, my voice calm, movement steady, but it wasn't how I remembered it. The woman didn't vanish through a wall. The boy never appeared. The house looked ordinary, empty. I gave a full perimeter check, called in a false alarm, and left. Nothing strange, nothing wrong, just a normal call. But it was a lie, a performance, and I had no memory of recording it. I started to wonder if I'd been replaced, not fully, not physically, but internally, like something was rewriting me from the inside out. My speech, my patterns, my thoughts. I'd catch myself humming a tune I didn't know, craving foods I never liked, repeating phrases in my sleep that I didn't understand. Once I passed a mirror in a store and saw myself stop, smile, wink. But I hadn't moved. I called my sister and asked her if I seemed different lately. There was a long pause on the line. Then she said, "You've been calling me every night for a week, always at the same time. But you never say anything. You just breathe." That night I stayed awake in the living room with every light on. Around 2 a.m. the hallway light began to flicker. I stood holding the blanket like a shield and watched the door creak open. My bedroom was dark. I could see the outline of my body still lying in bed, chest rising and falling. Peaceful. I stepped closer. The body in the bed turned its head slowly toward me, eyes open. Its mouth moved silently. I leaned in. It whispered, "Go back." I ran. When I looked again, the bed was empty. The next day, I went to our department's mental health officer and requested an evaluation. I sat through an hour of questions, answering each one as best I could. At the end, she nodded slowly and said I showed no signs of delusion. In fact, she said I seemed extremely well adjusted. She handed me a report to review. My name was on the top, but the signature at the bottom wasn't mine. It looked like my handwriting, but it wasn't mine. When I left the building, I passed a reflection in the glass front door. It waved at me. I didn't wave back. Now I don't sleep. I keep the lights on. I check the mirrors every hour, because something followed me out of that house, and it's learning, watching, getting better at pretending to be me. I started recording myself at night, not because I wanted to see what was happening, but because I needed proof that something was. The first night, the footage was blank, just me sleeping. No movement, no sound. The second night, the audio cut out around 2:17 a.m., but the video showed me sitting up, eyes open, staring at the wall for 23 minutes without blinking. The third night, I wasn't in the bed at all. The room was empty, at least until the last 30 seconds, when I walked back in from off camera, lay down and closed my eyes. I never remembered leaving. I brought the footage to a friend in the forensics unit. I didn't tell him what I suspected, only that I thought someone was messing with me. He reviewed it, then called me the next morning, confused. He said the metadata showed the video hadn't been recorded. It had been written over an old dash cam file. One from a cruiser assigned to an officer who died in 1984. His last call? Birch Hollow Lane. A 911 hang-up. Same time, same date. I stopped checking after that. Now I don't know what day it is unless someone tells me. I check clocks, but they're never in sync. Sometimes I see myself already doing things before I decide to do them. Sometimes I speak and hear the words half a second after they leave my mouth. And sometimes I see other versions of myself out of the corner of my eye, watching me, waiting. Last week I turned on the TV and found a news report I didn't recognize. It was me, being interviewed. Calm, smiling, describing my time with the department. I never gave that interview. The ticker at the bottom read, "Lieutenant awarded for exceptional service years after presumed lost in the line of duty." The date was 5 years ahead. My email inbox has messages I didn't send. My social media posts things I didn't write. People congratulate me for things I haven't done. And I feel myself drifting further from whatever I was. I no longer feel the need to blink. Food tastes muted. Music sounds flat. And when I see my reflection, I have to force myself to remember that I'm supposed to be the one in control. I don't think I am anymore. 2 days ago, someone rang my doorbell at 2:17 a.m. I checked the peephole and saw myself standing on the porch in full uniform. He smiled and said, "We've been waiting for the next shift." I didn't open the door, but the next morning I woke up wearing the uniform he had on, and my gun was missing. Tonight I found a new call log on my desk, printed, dated, already signed. Same location, same name, same time. I didn't print it, I didn't sign it. But it's here, and the cruiser is already running outside. If this story ever gets out, if someone finds this recording and hears my voice, just remember one thing. If you ever get a call at 2:17 a.m. from Birch Hollow Lane, don't answer it. Don't investigate. Don't try to help. Because once you've heard the voice on the line, you're already part of it. and something else is already wearing your face.